having the very interesting findings fresh in our memory. Findings about how we can transform the system to the benefit of the patient. We are now ready to proceed to another topic: innovation as a lever of growth and as a lever of progress. We will try to approach all the different aspects of the system. We will start with a keynote address by Mr. Theodorikakos, then Mr. Nikos Vettas, Yiannis Valvis, Talor Sax, Kavita Patel, and Mr. Filiotis. And of course, we will have an excellent moderation by Mr. Yannis Tountas. If you could please all take your seats here on stage, and we will start with a video of the Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for the invitation. Unfortunately, I couldn't be with you there today in order to take part in the extremely interesting discussion with all the distinguished panelists and in order to see you in person. Unfortunately, I had some prior engagements, because of which I had to be to Salonika. Allow me, however, to share with you some thoughts. Innovation, without a doubt, lies in the heart of economic growth. It contributes decisively to the competitiveness of the economy, and it is a prerequisite for the progress of any society. It is the particular force of a man that allows them to expand its boundaries, and there is no doubt that innovation has a special value in health sector, since it saves lives and makes the lives of people that suffer from health problems much better. In the Ministry of Development, we support the efforts made by the companies that operate in the health sector, since they constitute a dynamic sector of the Greek economy, a field where our country is highly competitive. Of course, the reform of the clawback system stands out. The offsetting of expenses with expenses for clinical trials or investment expenses of those who are obligated to make paybacks, or through investment plans for the development of products or production lines, as well as policies for the rationalization of pharmaceutical expenditure. In the context of the first open call for the action, we had 54 projects included of 33 pharmaceutical companies of a total budget of over 500 million euros, with a public expenditure reaching 250 million euros. At the same time, this year, 2024, and 2025, next year, the process will go on, since we have secured the funding of 150 million and 40 applications for support have been submitted, amounting to 0.5 billion euros, the public expenditure being over 200 million euros. As a Ministry of Development, we support research and innovation in all sectors of the economy in the context of a new production model that we shape and we implement in order to promote sustainable and equal growth and in order to promote green and fair transition. We fund with 300 million euros the action I Innovate a Research. The researchers can submit applications for funding. Small, medium enterprises can do the same, or joint ventures of businesses, as well as research organizations. The first intervention, research and development, has been completed, and 427 proposals have been submitted, with a public expenditure exceeding the 178 million euros and a budget of over 237 million euros. Because of increased demand, we actually got 2 extensions. The last one was given a few days ago for the submission of funding proposals. For the second intervention, that is for joint ventures of businesses and research organizations, We will soon present new funding tools and new initiatives because development is a prerequisite for the growth of our country. Thank you very much. Very well. We would like to thank the Minister for all the interesting issues he raised. Unfortunately, we don't have him with us so that he can take part in the discussion that will follow. I just wanted to welcome all of you. My name is Yannis Tountas, and I will moderate this roundtable discussion on innovation. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to take part in this interesting conference. I would like to thank the distinguished speakers that we'll get to hear later on, and of course all of you that take part in the works of this conference. I will be brief, and I would kindly ask the speakers to observe the time of 3 minutes. We will have the opportunity to have a second round of questions. We are lagging behind the program by 30 minutes. That's why I'm asking that. So, on my part, what I would like to say is that there is no one in this room that actually questions the value of innovation when it comes to the improvement of health and, of course, to the strengthening of the economic growth of a country through the innovative, productive activities. However, we shall not focus on that. We will focus on what should be done more in our country so that this dual value of innovation for health and for the economy can be further enhanced. So we will start with the first speaker, Mr. Nikos Vettas, who is General Director at the Foundation for Economic and Industrial Research and Professor of Economics at the Athens University of Economics and Business. Mr. Vettas, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vettas. Compared to the others in the room, I have as a key feature that I don't come from the area of health, so I will be more of an economist here. And say the word innovation. Now, there are 3 dimensions that the state must pay attention to today, but also the sector as a whole. The first dimension is that we have stricken a balance gradually in the last 5-6 years in the drug reimbursement area with the clawback, the rebates and all the other paybacks. But the system is overly slow in the introduction of innovative drugs in the upper part of the segmentation. To reverse this and to reach the European average and the European times, in my opinion, 3 things must be done. One, of course, is that now we need more money. There was a report presented yesterday by the IOBE, the Foundation for Economic and Industrial Research, with this fair. It was shown that the part burdened by the sector and the patients is disproportionately large. But this is not enough. Gradually, we need to increase the participation of generics in the lower part of the distribution. We will need to have a filter and a selection in the upper part of the distribution, in the sense that innovative drugs can save health expenditure for the rest of the system, even hospitalization cost. This is one part, and it has to do with the health, the drug system rather. The second part has to do with research and development, R&D. Besides the steps that have already been made forward and were mentioned by the Minister in his video, compared to the other European countries that we want to compare against, I'm not just talking about the Netherlands or Finland, I'm even talking about Spain. Research and development carried out in the pharma sector is very low, very limited. I see it more easily, for a number of reasons, to develop research centers either by Greek or multinational companies, and for those who don't have a picture as to what centers these may be, we're talking about centers that can have between 1,000 to 1,200 people as a staff, not just HCPs, but people in IT or dealing in statistics and data. In relation to clinical studies as well, we'll move easier towards that point than we will do with production. The third part has to do with innovation and we're lagging behind there as well, although steps have been made forward, is the interconnection of the health sector and drug with quantitative analyses. For instance, we are fortunate enough in having designed the system thus to have data from IDIKA, which, however, are not used to the extent that they could be, either by those who produce or those who do primary research, raw research, base research. Therein reflects another pathogenicity that we have inherited from previous decades, is that the health sector neither knows nor cares to count and measure. We think that health should not be quantified, it's a supreme good and everything, and we couldn't be more wrong than this, ladies and gentlemen, because scientifically speaking, the interconnection of data analysis with health services is something in which our country is straddling. It's what sort of programs we have in curricula. Innovation can, in fact, bring yield fruit. But why do I say that we need to have interventions now, since the system is at an equilibrium? We have struck a balance. Some of the speakers in the previous panel mentioned it. The data in the system change, and scientific and technological advance is something that we should not ignore. It would be a tremendous problem, but the population features and characteristics change. The country has just about started suspecting that we should have a long-term care system in place, and this long-term system should be in place, but we can't do this without the interventions I mentioned in the beginning of my speech. Thank you very much, Mr. Vettas. I would like to keep these 3 points you raised: the need for funding, the research centers and with the clinical trials and studies, and the interconnection with quantitative studies and analysis by IDIKA. Here, just to stress the importance of the last thing, because we will talk about drugs again, and the problems we have in innovative drugs in our country is something we will revisit. But for IDIKA, I would like to say that when a few years ago we were asked by the then Minister of Digital Governance, Mr. Takis, to do a big study, and they asked for 3 academic centers in our country to do these studies to get e-prescription and to study what is happening and what the problems are and what we need to solve them. We could not perform this study and utilize this rich material from e-prescription because on behalf of the Ministry of Health, many objections were raised, including that we can't give such evidence to third parties, the third parties being the academic institutions of the country, for crying out loud. But still, let's give the floor to the next speaker, Mr. Yiannis Valvis, who is Head of Strategy and IR in Hellenic Healthcare Group, HHG. Thank you very much for the invitation. Well, of course, I'm trying to convey the reality of innovation in the field of hospitals, which is not much different than what we already talked about. Now, I agree with what Mr. Vettas said, that we need to leverage and utilize data. For some reason, in the sector of health, we do not do that, especially in hospitals. Hospitals live from innovation and give life to innovation. We have the implementation of new therapeutic approaches. The advances of medical science find full implementation there and an application. Now, as hospitals, we have to meet the demographic challenges in a framework which includes the well-known limitations funding-wise, either in terms of human resources or of financial resources. There is a problem with finding HCPs the world over. So the medical work and the nursing work needs to be carried out with fewer funds. So to find innovative solutions is not just a wish, it's a reality that we're living in. Now, trying to share our experience about what we've done, I would like to say that investing or constantly investing in new equipment that utilizes the new technological advances is the first and foremost thing to do. That being said, we're trying to come closer to what we call the health system ecosystem and these new companies, the startups. And it's something we should lean on with much more interest and care, because we have a lot to gain from the startups as the healthcare system. We took a third step, and I'm very happy that with the organizers we have a lot of people here who can say more things, because we participate in a family that has focused on digital health in the field of startups. It's a multinational, I would say, family based in Israel. And I would like to share our own responsibility, and I would say that we were fortunate enough to see up close and personal how the innovation ecosystem works in Israel, which is a unique experience. It's a lifetime experience. And it's my personal opinion that apart from the purely financial and economic part, you can see that innovation requires a different cultural approach or educational approach. At any rate, this way, we're trying to take more active steps towards innovation rather than just expect science to move forward or a new treatment protocol to be introduced. Of course, there are difficulties. It's not a way paved in rose petals. It's not easy, but the regulatory framework, I would say, is a very important factor. And sometimes it's labyrinthine, in other cases it's non-existent. So you have a lot of tools that no one says and explains how you can incorporate it in the everyday life of a hospital. And even the management of change is something we shouldn't overlook. How to pass this innovation to your partners, to the HCPs. It's not an easy task to do, although they are people who par excellence work in education and incorporate education in new techniques. Familiarization with new tools, well, it's sometimes a more difficult thing to pass on to them. It's a field in which we're working very intensely.
I'd like to thank Mr. Valvi. Before I give the floor to the next speaker, I would like to note what Mr. Valvi said about innovation in the field of digital health, which is very important. Our country and the public sector in general tries to get involved in that as much as possible. In the second round, I'm going to ask you more questions about that. And of course, I would also like to touch upon the difficulties you mentioned, how we can make the most of this type of technologies, but we will get the chance to do that in the second round. Now we proceed to the third speaker, Mr. Talor Sax, Managing Partner at eHealth Ventures. Κύριε Σάξ, έχετε το λόγο. Καλησπέρα σας. Λυπάμαι που μιλάω στα αγγλικά. Δουλεύω πολύ τα ελληνικά μου, αλλά σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για την πρόσκληση να βρίσκομαι σήμερα εδώ. Μας ρωτήσατε για τον αντίκτυπο της καινοτομίας στο σύστημα υγείας. Είναι δύσκολο να μετρηθεί. Βεβαίως, τσέκαρα κάποια δεδομένα για το εθνικό επίπεδο του Ισραήλ. Και βεβαίως δεν εκπροσωπώ το Ισραήλ υπό καμία ιδιότητα, αλλά τσέκαρα τα δεδομένα και είδα ότι οι ετήσιες εξαγωγές είναι περίπου 160 δισεκατομμύρια δολαρίων ετησίως σε σύγκριση με τα 100 της Ελλάδας. 50% αυτών είναι υψηλή τεχνολογία, η οποία δημιουργείται χάρη σε αυτήν την κουλτούρα καινοτομίας που κυριαρχεί στο Ισραήλ. Και είμαστε πάρα πολύ τυχεροί που έχουμε μια τέτοια κουλτούρα. Εγώ ίδιος είμαι υπεύθυνος για ένα ταμείο, ένα φαντ που προάγει την ανάπτυξη της καινοτομίας στο σύστημα υγείας. Τα νοσοκομεία στο Ισραήλ και το σύστημα υγείας στο Ισραήλ ήταν τομείς που υιοθετούσαν την τεχνολογία. Εγώ ξεκίνησα το ταξίδι μου στο τομέα της τεχνολογίας το 2001 και θυμάμαι τότε, πριν από 23 χρόνια, είχαμε μία πύλη online όπου κάθε πολίτης της χώρας μπορούσε να έχει πρόσβαση προκειμένου να έχει πρόσβαση στον ηλεκτρονικό του αρχείο. Απλά πράγματα, εντάξει, δεν είναι κάτι σύνθετο από άποψη τεχνολογίας, δεν είναι τεχνητή νοημοσύνη, δεν είναι επιστημονική φαντασία, είναι απλή πληροφορική, η οποία όμως υιοθετήθηκε εγκαίρως και με αποτελεσματικό τρόπο. Και θα ήθελα να πω δύο πράγματα για την καινοτομία. Η καινοτομία για την καινοτομία δεν είναι ένας έξυπνος στόχος. Η καινοτομία θα έπρεπε να είναι ένα σύστημα που θα έχει ως στόχο τον εντοπισμό προβλημάτων, αλλά και τον εντοπισμό ευκαιριών. Θα σας δώσω ένα παράδειγμα. Όλοι γνωρίζουμε ότι ο πληθυσμός γυράσκει. Έχουμε προετοιμαστεί γι' αυτό. Τι κάνουμε, τι είδους νέες τεχνολογίες χρησιμοποιούμε, μπορούμε να χρησιμοποιήσουμε για να αντιμετωπίσουμε αυτή την πρόκληση. Και μάλιστα, θέλω να σας πω ότι επί καθημερινής βάσης, εγώ τσεκάρω τα δεδομένα και τις τάσεις και ίσως να μην το γνωρίζουν πολύ. Και εγώ ίδιος το έμαθα πριν από λίγους μήνες. Τους τελευταίους 3 μήνες στις Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες υπάρχει σαφής μείωση του προσδόκιμου ζωής. Πολύ λιγότερο και χαμηλότερο είναι το προσδόκιμο σε σχέση με 3 χρόνια πριν. Για πρώτη φορά τα τελευταία 100 χρόνια. Το έχει λάβει κανείς αυτό υπόψη του? Τι κάνει? Προετοιμάζεται? Και από την άλλη πλευρά, από την πλευρά των ευκαιριών. Δεν είναι νέες τεχνολογίες. Εντάξει, η παραγωγική τεχνητή νοημοσύνη πλέον είναι πανταχού παρούσα. Πώς μπορούμε να την χρησιμοποιήσουμε για να επιλύσουμε τα προβλήματά μας? Δεν χρειάζεται να την χρησιμοποιήσουμε απλώς επειδή υπάρχει. Όχι, αλλά για να επιλύσουμε προβλήματα, είτε στον τομέα της υγείας είτε σε άλλο τομέα. Δεν χρειάζεται να επανεφεύρουμε κάτι. Ουσιαστικά μιλάμε για ένα σύστημα απλών ανθρώπων που εντοπίζουν τις ευκαιρίες και τις προκλήσεις και στη συνέχεια αδράτουν την καινοτομία για να τα αντιμετωπίσουν όλα αυτά. Όπως είπατε και εσείς, θα πρέπει να προσεγγίσουμε την καινοτομία ως ένα μέσο για την επίλυση προβλημάτων και όχι μόνο για την δημιουργία κέρδους. Αν κατάλαβα καλά αυτό που είπατε, είναι πολύ πιο σημαντικό δηλαδή να προσανατολίσουμε την καινοτομία προς το όφελος και την υγεία των ανθρώπων και όχι μόνο για οικονομικό κέρδος ή για οικονομικούς σκοπούς. Θα έχουμε τη δυνατότητα στο δεύτερο γύρο παρεμβάσεων να ακούσουμε περισσότερα από την πλευρά σας για αυτά. Let's move on to the next speaker, Ms. Kavita Patel. First of all, I would like to welcome Ms. Patel. In the beginning, we mentioned that she has just arrived in our country. She is manager director of a big company, Roche. We all know the company. She has been only a couple of months here in Greece, and we hope that she will stay in the country and will have a productive presence here. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ. Η μόνη λέξη που έχω μάθει είναι καλησπέρα. Και εγώ δουλεύω τα ελληνικά μου, οπότε ζητώ συγγνώμη που δεν μιλώ ελληνικά. Πρώτα απ' όλα θα ήθελα να ευχαριστήσω τους διοργανωτές για αυτό το υπέροχο συνέδριο. Θα ήθελα επίσης να ευχαριστήσω και τους διοργανωτές που μου έδωσαν την ευκαιρία να συζητήσω για αυτό το πάρα πολύ ενδιαφέρον θέμα. Και θα ξεκινήσω με αυτά που είπε ο Υπουργός. Κάτι που έχουμε επαναλάβει πολλές φορές στο Σένεδρο, ότι οι επένδυσεις στην υγεία μπορούν να ενισχύσουν την οικονομική ανάπτυξη τόσο μιας χώρας όσο και ενός κλάδου. Οπότε πρέπει να σκεφτούμε τι μπορούν να προσφέρουν οι καινοτόμες εταιρείες και να δούμε πώς ο φαρμακευτικός τομέας γενικότερα μπορεί να αποτελέσει μέρος μιας λύσης. Όπως γνωρίζουμε, οι καινοτόμες θεραπείες μπορούν να μετασχηματίσουν τη ζωή των ασθενών, των οικογενειών, δεδομένου ότι μειώνουν το βάρος για την κοινωνία γενικότερα και επιτρέπουν στους ασθενείς και τους φροντιστές να συνεχίσουν να εργάζονται και να είναι παραγωγικά μέλη της κοινωνίας. Επίσης, γνωρίζουμε ότι οι καινοτόμες θεραπείες μπορούν να δημιουργήσουν αξία στο σύστημα υγείας. Και αυτό που εννοώ με αυτό είναι ένα παράδειγμα κάποιων υποδόριων εφαρμογών, όπου παίρνουμε βιολογικούς παράγοντες και στη συνέχεια τους εγχαίουμε με συγκεκριμένες συσκευές. Και αυτό μας επιτρέπει να μειώσουμε το βάρος για τα νοσοκομεία, να μειώσουμε τους χρόνους αναμονής και να αυξήσουμε το capacity, ούτως ώστε και άλλοι ασθενείς να μπορέσουν να απολαύσουν υπηρεσίες. Αυτό εννοούμε με τον όρο καινοτομία. Ως φαρμακευτική βιομηχανία δεν επικεντρωνόμαστε μόνο στην ανάπτυξη καινοτόμων θεραπείων. Επενδύουμε σημαντικά στην έρευνα και την ανάπτυξη. Φέρνουμε κλινικές δοκιμές σε χώρες και επιτρέπουμε σε εξειδικευμένους επιστήμονες να συμμετάσχουν σε αυτές και δημιουργούμε έτσι νέες θέσεις εργασίας, τόσο για γιατρούς, όσο και για νοσηλευτές, όσο και για επαγγελματίες άλλων τομέων. Άρα αυτό που πρέπει να σκεφτούμε είναι πώς θα μπορέσουμε να φέρουμε καινοτομία, αν θέλετε περισσότερη καινοτομία εδώ στην Ελλάδα. Πώς θα μπορέσουμε να αντιληφθούμε την υγεία ως επένδυση και όχι ως κόστος. Είναι επιτακτική ανάγκη μαζί, δηλαδή η βιομηχανία, η κυβέρνηση, οι ενώσεις ασθενών να αρχίζουν να αντιλαμβάνονται την υγεία ως επένδυση. Εδώ το περιβάλλον στην Ελλάδα, όπως το γνωρίζω εγώ τουλάχιστον τους τελευταίους 2 μήνες, δεν είναι βιώσιμο. Έχουμε δει ότι υπάρχει μία μείωση στον αριθμό των καινοτόμων θεραπείων που φτάνουν στη χώρα. Γνωρίζουμε επίσης ότι μεταξύ 2019 και 2022 50% καινοτόμα φάρμακα έχουν φτάσει στην Ελλάδα. Πώς θα μπορέσουμε να το αλλάξουμε αυτό? Κάποιες από τις λύσεις που θα ήθελα να προτείνω είναι οι εξής. Πώς θα μπορέσουμε να διασφαλίσουμε επαρκή χρηματοδότηση για την καινοτομία? Η Ελλάδα βρίσκεται πίσω σε σχέση με άλλες ευρωπαϊκές χώρες. Επίσης, βρίσκεται πίσω σε σχέση με τις κλινικές δοκιμές που λαμβάνουν χώρα στην Ελλάδα. Πώς θα ενισχύσουμε τα κίνητρα για τις κλινικές δοκιμές, ούτως ώστε να συνεχιστεί η επένδυση στην καινοτομία, στην έρευνα και την ανάπτυξη? Τέλος, πώς θα μπορέσουμε να δημιουργήσουμε ένα πλαίσιο όπου η πραγματική κοινωνική αξία των τεχνολογιών και των φαρμάκων που φέρνουμε γίνεται μετρήσιμη. Καταλαβαίνουμε ότι ο προπολογισμός είναι περιορισμένος. Εντούτοις, αν κάνουμε μια καλή δουλειά και αν αξιολογήσουμε όχι μόνο την κλινική, οικονομική αλλά και κοινωνική αξία των φαρμάκων, τότε θα φέρουμε τα σωστά φάρμακα για τους σωστούς ασθενείς. Ωραία.
Right, thank you very much, Kavita Patel. And I think that you raised a series. Let's take it from the top. Thank you very much, Kavita Patel. So she actually raised a lot of questions, but a lot of these questions do not have answers that go without saying, and unfortunately the time we don't have does not allow us to look for these answers. But I would like, in the second round of questions, if you could just give us some insights and some answers to the most key questions according to how we can deal with them, if you may. Let's move on to the last speaker now, to Mr. Spyros Filiotis. He is Vice President and General Manager of Pharmaserve Lilly and Pharmaserve Hellas, and I'm very glad to have him around our table. When I was President of the EOF, the Greek FDA, Spyros' father, Yiannis Valvis, was President of the SPE. Both of them, from a different perspective, had to deal with this insurmountable mountain that we had to see with memoranda of the drugs curtailing pharmaceutical expenditure, and we each fought our battle from our own side. That I believe that the best judge is the results of this effort, which helped us tremendously to exit the memoranda. So, Spyros, thank you very much for being with us, and you have the floor. Thank you very much, Professor. And like Mr. Tountas said in the beginning, no one questions the value of innovation in drugs. I mean, even if we look back a century ago, all the drugs we have today used to be innovative, didn't they? Mr. Vettas, you talked about a balance in the system, equilibrium. And indeed, from the outside, this reimbursement system seems well balanced. But like Kavita said, as far as we're concerned, we feel that we are on the precipice. We're at the end of the cliff, okay? And we said this time and again that funding is not enough. And we fear very much that we are at a turning point, that unless difficult and important decisions are taken, we will have to face far greater problems than the one we have today in terms of access, decision-making and stuff. I would like to touch upon clinical research a bit more than what the colleague did. We all know how important clinical research is. We have been saying in these conferences for years how good it is for patients. It helps doctors. They learn. It's economical. The health system stands only to gain from clinical research that all companies are trying to bring to the country. And of course, economy in general. I mean, from what we do as the health sector, there's more than 100% local added value as a result of what we do. The system, like Mr. Sax said, must be greatly improved. Innovation of the system and in the system, which, like you said, is a simple thing in and of itself. Innovation in a system is not difficult to create, okay? But all interested parties must meet, locate the problems and fix them. The minister, in the beginning, talked about the programs that give a lot of money, offset, clawback, and this and that for research. Unfortunately, these do not work. We've seen that in action, that they simply don't work. There's a lot of proposals, okay? We want all these things that appear without saying, from a country such as Israel, to put it to good action and to sit together and say, these are the problems, these are potential solutions, let's put this to action, guys. And you'll see that as though we were waving a magic wand, in a few years we'll be able to say and talk about the Greek miracle. That all we had to do was tweak 5 little things and the engine got started, and now we're a center for clinical research, and we will be the envy and the apple of the eye of the entire world. It's something I wish. It's something we've been trying to do for decades in this country. And thank you very much, Mr. Sax, for saying these things so simply and so beautifully. It's the innovation of the system. This is what we want. Thank you, Talor, for this. Right, thank you, Mr. Filiotis. And, well, you know what? Back when I was studying in the States, it was back in the 80s, we had health economics as a class, and the key subjects were around the sense of cost-benefit and cost efficiency. Now, the years that I was as a president of the IOBE back then and subsequently, in our country, we didn't have this approach as a criterion at all. All we had was cost, period. In pharma, for instance, in drugs, we didn't have a pharmaceutical policy. We had an invoicing and pricing list policy, taking into consideration the enumerator rather than the other part of that equation. Okay, I mean, I know that things have improved ever since. I don't know to what extent they have improved. But when I hear, for instance, and I'm talking to you, Mr. Vettas, primarily, that in order for an innovative drug to be able to come to the country and to be included in the prescription capabilities, there needs to be an offset and to have a discount on the basis of the clawback. So I realize that this is a huge impediment in the introduction of innovative drugs. I would like to hear what you have to say, and if you think that we can possibly deal with this tremendous delay caused by this deliberation and this negotiation in the logic it is being done today.
I believe you explained it very well. It is how we can stabilize cost and benefit, and cost in a wider sense, not only the immediate cost of using a specific drug, but also what it can offer to the health of patient by substituting other health services that may be necessary. This is exactly what we are lacking today, and this is lacking. And of course, you are far more expert in that than I am, because we don't have a visibility in the system. Not only a drug that arrives today on a specific day and it is different the next week. No, we need to have a planning for the drugs that will stand for the next 3 years, for example, because more or less we know which are the trends of innovation. In order for this to happen, we need to make a rationalization of the reimbursement system so that we can actually create a space. The concept of innovation is identical to drug. The life cycle starts with something that is totally innovative, then the patent expires, it proceeds to other stages and may be substituted by other drugs. This life cycle, once it becomes part of a regulated system like ours, is asynchronous, and that is why we have the delays that you mentioned. So where we stand today, and as you aptly said, we need to have a more systematic approach to the relation between cost and benefit. And this will actually increase the visibility that the companies need. And they will better know what is the role in the country, because companies and businesses, and especially after the bailout programs, find it difficult to make a planning, and they find themselves in a difficult state of reimbursement in which they have to sell without knowing whether they're going to get paid. So this is the next step. However, I would like to highlight a couple of points that I briefly mentioned previously. The part of attracting, Mr. Filiotis, for example, talked about clinical research. I would like to insist on primary research. It is an independent space. For a multinational company, this may mean a planning where there will be a research center in California, another in Alabama, another in Spain, another in Slovenia, and so forth, and one in Greece. So the planning of research is done on the basis of portfolio, which means that you run 100 different lines, and it is also on the basis of research. If we knew what we're looking for, we would have it, which means that we are looking for something and we usually fail. And when for the global health system having this type of research center where 2,000 people, highly specialized work is nothing, it is just a matter of a small regulation, for a country it can make a major difference. And of course, it goes without saying that the clinical trials are of utmost importance. Based on the latest studies by IOBE, we have come up with high multipliers, economic multipliers, that benefit the patients. And the utilization of data, you mentioned that previously. You said whether the data of prescription can be available. But it's not just that. Now, we have the patient's records. We have the interconnection of hospitals. We have the DRGs. We need to proceed faster because this increases the transparency, increases the possibility of providing customized treatment in the future. Of course, they require that a large part of the system that in the past were centered on doctors will no longer be centered on doctors, but will use other data sciences and protocols. But since we are lagging behind in terms of that, I believe that if we ever manage to do it and taking into account the positive elements of our system, then we will be able to make significant steps ahead. Yes, indeed. It is not just Ithika with the e-prescription. We also have SINET, an effort started by Mr. Polizos. Then we had the BI by the ministry, where there is a huge volume of data on a daily basis about what's going on in the health system. And I'm wondering whether there has ever been a systematic approach to use this enormous volume of data in order to draw conclusions and to decide on the directions that we need to follow. I hope that this will eventually happen in the future. Now, with regard to Mr. Valvis, I would like to ask this experience you shared with us from the private sector, which is a very pioneering part in our country. To what extent do you believe this type of innovative digital or other services can become part of the reimbursement rationale? It is something to be seen. It is a difficult exercise to solve because, by default, innovation has the character of composition and utilization of data, but it requires time in order to prove its effectiveness. So we also need to take into account the matter of safety. In the health sector, we have no room for mistakes. So experiments and trials are very important for future progress. But before we reach a result that will be clinically accepted, we need to be sure that it's 100% safe. Of course, we also see a slower progress in the institutional framework. I will give you an example. The remote sessions, which are a tool that, technologically speaking, are very simple. The necessary framework that can actually support them or reimburse them does not exist. And because of the lack of this framework, these are not perceived or characterized as medical act, just like the physical session with the doctor. I believe that all of us, all the different parties from public and private sector need to come to an understanding so that we can actually develop such a framework, because technologies exist and it's a shame that we don't have the necessary framework that we could have for the benefit of the patients.
Right, excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Sachs, you have the floor now to say a few more words about the issue you raised earlier about the resolution, the solving of problems, and on what criteria can one choose which problems to put in the forefront and solve first.
Είπαμε διευθυντής ενός venture capital και στηρίζουμε νεοφυείς επιχειρήσεις. Βεβαίως θέλουμε να βγάζουμε κέρδος πάντα, αλλά ως οικονομολόγος μπορώ να σας πω ότι η οικονομία είναι ένας τομέας όπου βασίζεται στην αναζήτηση προστιθέμενης αξίας. Εγώ δεν γνωρίζω κανένα σύστημα υγείας που να έχει διαθέσιμα χρήματα για να πληρώσει νέες τεχνολογίες. Δεν υπάρχει τέτοιο σύστημα. Οπότε, αν έχεις μία νέα τεχνολογία, θα πρέπει να είσαι σε θέση να αποδείξεις την προστιθέμενη αξία που θα προσδώσει στο σύστημα, που θα την υιοθετήσει. Και αυτό ακριβώς αναζητούμε. Όταν επενδύουμε σε νέες τεχνολογίες και όταν επενδύουμε στις εταιρείες που αναπτύσσουν αυτές τις τεχνολογίες, θέτουμε ερωτήματα. Ποιος θα πληρώσει, ποιος θα είναι πρόθυμος να πληρώσει, ποιο θα είναι το όφελος για το σύστημα, ποιο θα είναι το όφελος για τον ασθενή. Δεν αρκεί να έχεις ένα σύστημα που θα βγάζει κέρδος για έναν γιατρό, παραδείγματος χάρη, ή ένα σύστημα όπου οι ασθενείς θα πληρώνουν περισσότερα από αυτά που πρέπει. Πάντα εμείς αναζητούμε τη σωστή καινοτομία που θα δημιουργήσει αξία υγείας αλλά και οικονομική αξία. Διαφορετικά δεν θα είσαι ποτέ επιτυχημένος σε βάθος χρόνου. Εντάξει, αλλά θα ήθελα να κάνω την ερώτησή μου πιο συγκεκριμένη. Λαμβάνετε υπόψη τις βασικές ανάγκες του ελληνικού πληθυσμού όσον αφορά τα ανασολογικά πρωτότυπα? Με άλλα λόγια, έχετε κάποια κριτήρια τα οποία άπτονται σοβαρών προβλημάτων υγείας του ελληνικού πληθυσμού, ώστε να επενδύσετε περισσότερα για την επίλυση αυτών των προβλημάτων, παρά προβλήματα που δεν έχουν τόσο σημαντικό αντίκτυπο στον ελληνικό πληθυσμό? Για άλλη μια φορά θα ήθελα να σας πω ότι είμαι ένας επιχειρηματίας του ιδιωτικού τομέα. Δεν θέλω να διορθώσω το σύστημα, όχι, θέλω να προάγω την καινοτομία που θα οδηγήσει σε βελτίωση του συστήματος, αλλά και που θα δημιουργήσει αξία για μένα, κέρδος. Αυτός είναι ο ρόλος μου, αυτό είναι το σκεπτικό μου. Εντάξει, κατανοητό. Σε πολλές περιπτώσεις θα έπρεπε να ισχύει το ίδιο, να είναι ο ίδιος στόχος, διότι αν έχεις το σωστό εργαλείο που μπορεί να επιλύσει ένα πρόβλημα. Παραδείγματος χάρη, εμείς γνωρίζουμε ποιοι είναι οι πιο ακριβοί ασθενείς. Είναι οι ασθενείς με τα χρόνια παθήματα, με τις χρόνιες παθήσεις. Αν έχεις μια τεχνολογία που μπορεί να βελτιώσει τη ζωή τους και ταυτόχρονα να εξοικονομήσει πόρους για το σύστημα, τότε τέλεια. Όταν βρίσκεις λοιπόν αυτή την τεχνολογία, αυτό είναι προς όφελος και των δύο πλευρών. Και άρα είναι καθαρή επιτυχία. Κυρία Πατέλ, θέσατε πολλά ερωτήματα. Και εγώ αναζητώ απαντήσεις σε κάποια από αυτά τα ερωτήματά σας. Απαντήσεις βεβαίως που θα μπορούσατε να μας δώσετε κι εσείς. Ναι, σας ευχαριστώ για την ευκαιρία. Θα ήθελα να μιλήσω για τις 3 περιοχές που επικεντρώθηκα. Πρώτα, πώς θα μπορέσουμε να διασφαλίσουμε χρηματοδότηση, βιώσιμη χρηματοδότηση εδώ στην Ελλάδα. Και θα σας δώσω το παράδειγμα μιας μελέτης που δημοσιεύθηκε στην Ευρώπη, στο Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο πιο συγκεκριμένα. Εκεί προσέγγισαν την επένδυση στην υγεία όχι ως κόστος, αλλά ως απόδοση επί της επένδυσης. Έβαλαν χρήματα σε καινοτόμες λύσεις, όπως σε φάρμακα παραδείγματος χάρη, και διαπίστωσαν μία αύξηση και βελτίωση στην ποιότητα ζωής των ασθενών, που στη συνέχεια οδήγησε σε μια εξοικονόμηση 27 δισεκατομμυρίων για το σύστημα. Οπότε, αν συνεχίσουμε να αντιλαμβανόμαστε την καινοτομία και την επένδυση, την υγεία, ως κόστος, τότε δεν θα μπορέσουμε να πετύχουμε σημαντικά αποτελέσματα. Το δεύτερο, το πλαίσιο αποζημίωσης. Βρισκόμαστε σε μια πάρα πολύ καλή χρονική συγκυρία με το H2A να αναπτύσσει κάποια πλαίσια αποζημίωσης που θα μπορέσουν να εφαρμοστούν και στην Ελλάδα. Οπότε εμείς πρέπει να σκεφτούμε ποιο θα είναι αυτό το πλαίσιο που θα λαμβάνει υπόψη όχι μόνο την οικονομική αξία αλλά και την κοινωνική αξία των τεχνολογιών και των φαρμάκων που μπορούν να μετασχηματίσουν τη ζωή των ασθενών. Και το τρίτο σημείο αφορά τις κλινικές δοκιμές. Πιστεύω ότι υπάρχει μια υπέροχη ευκαιρία ώστε να βελτιώσουμε τα κίνητρα για την διεξαγωγή κλινικών δοκιμών. Καταλαβαίνω ότι οι κλινικές δοκιμές έχουν πάρα πολλά στάδια και πάρα πολλά βήματα που πρέπει να απλοποιήσουμε. Οπότε πώς θα μπορέσουμε να βρούμε τα κίνητρα που θα ενθαρρύνουν τις εταιρείες να επενδύουν αλλά και να διεξάγουν κλινικές δοκιμές. Να αυξήσουμε δηλαδή την επένδυση για τις κλινικές δοκιμές, οι οποίες με τη σειρά τους θα οδηγήσουν σε μια ανάπτυξη της οικονομίας.
And moving on to the last speaker, Mr. Filiotis, for the clinical trials, and I would like to ask Mr. Filiotis for his opinion on this. I mean, it's really a crucial thing. I mean, in 2010, when I was appointed president of the IOBE, I never understood why clinical trials had to fall under the responsibility of an ethics committee. It always struck me as odd. It should have been a very well-enhanced IOBE service, well-staffed, well-manned, that would be able to make things happen. Because back then in 2010, we had a huge backlog of clinical trials and there was absolutely no mechanism of seeing them through. We did make an effort back then, 2010 to 2013, but I wanted your opinion that as of 2013 and until today, these 10 years, whether we've seen any improvements in this picture, in this effort regarding clinical trials. And where do you feel the burden for further improvement should be placed? Well, of course, we have improved a lot as of 2013, and each year we're taking steps forward. I would like to thank very much Mrs. Patel for counting the 112 steps, because I never managed to count them all. 112, 112. Now, what we need to keep in the back of our heads with clinical research is that it's a global competition. You see, all countries have realized that this is a very good thing and they want it for themselves as well. So yes, we do keep improving each year, but so do all the other countries. They keep improving and some of them take leaps forward rather than steps that we're making. So what do we need to invest in the country? Well, we need quality. It's of the utmost importance. What is of the utmost importance in clinical trial is good data. Fortunately, Greece is one of the best, I have to say, in terms of clinical of data things. And the second that we have a problem lagging behind is speed and the 112 steps. And of course, the ethics committee of the IOBE works now, but there's an entire system that trickles down to the hospitals and in hospital committees and managements of the IPE and hospital lawyers and all this that creates delays. The fastest country wins the medal, okay? And third is the cost. Well, we're businesses, like Talor said, we're businesses, okay? We're trying to solve problems, to bring innovative drugs, but we need to make it fast and in a lucrative way to make a profit. Now, the country that gives the best incentives to the big companies to do research in their country will receive the lion's share. And Greece isn't doing that well in that field. We have a lot of proposals. We're discussing with the ministry and we're hoping to take strides now, long strides to approach those that are running altogether forward. Right, well, thank you very much, one and all, for all the important and interesting things you shared with us, and we can now have the next step of the conference, which is the much-coveted lunch break. Thank you.